Hi there, it's Luca from Mosalingua. Today I'm very happy because I'm with Lydia Machova. I hope I pronounced it very well. So Lydia is an interpreter, she's a polyglot, she's the head organizer of the Polyglot gathering this year, and also she is a language mentor. We are going to discover a little bit what a language mentor means. So my first question, of course, is to have some information about your language background.
Yeah. Well, I started learning my first foreign language, which was English, when I was 11. And then I continued with German when I was 15. And then starting with 19, I took on a new language more or less every 2 years, which was Spanish, Polish, French, Esperanto, Russian, in this order.
Okay, very, very impressive. So you learned 7 languages so far, plus your native language, Slovak. And I'm very curious to know what are your first personal steps when you start to learn a language?
Yeah, I always start the same way. I buy a book for autodidacts, people who are learning by themselves. And I use the back translation method, which means that I translate these texts into Slovak, into a special notebook, and then I go sentence by sentence and I translate it back into the target language as many times as it takes for me to say it fluently. And in that way I learn a lot of vocabulary and grammar in context, and then I continue with some more fun activities.
And I'd like to know if your profession of interpreter has helped you somehow in the learning process.
Yes, well, this is definitely interrelated in the way that if you want to be an interpreter, you need to learn the languages a lot and you need to speak them well. But also when you use it when you are working as an interpreter, it helps you to keep the languages active. So it's kind of a symbiotic process. One helps the other.
Okay. So I know that you're a language mentor. You launched recently your site languagementor.com or SK. Language mentoring, sorry, languagementoring.com. So you're helping a lot of students, and so I think you can see like the differences between successful learners and unsuccessful learners. In your opinion, first of all, what is the key to have success in language learning from what you have observed working with those students?
Yeah. I think there is one big thing that people need to do in order to learn a language successfully, and that is to decide to really do it by themselves. And I see this as the greatest difference, honestly, because there's so many students of languages out there. You know, they go to language classes and they have teachers, etc. But they don't really want to learn, they want to be taught. And I think this is really the biggest difference, because once the students understand that they need to spend the most time with the language by themselves, then it starts working. And even people who have been struggling with the language for a long time suddenly start to see progress in their own learning, and it motivates them to learn more and more. So I think the main mistake that people make is that they just learn a little bit when they make some homework, do some homework, but otherwise they just go to the lessons and like wait, okay, teach me, you're the teacher, do the job. Okay. And this clearly doesn't work.
Okay, and do you think that there are other very important obstacles apart from the one you mentioned, from the point of view of an unsuccessful learner?
Yes, of course, there's several. I like to mention 4 things as part of my system, and the first one is that people need to have fun when learning a language. So if you don't enjoy the process, then it's just not going to stick in your mind, and you can spend hours with it, and your brain just says, "I'm not interested," And then the second thing is that you need a lot of contact with the language. So it's just not enough if you read a little text here, a little text there. You really need to have read a lot of books, listen to a lot of videos, etc. It takes time. And then thirdly, it's much better if you do it more frequently in little chunks than if you spend 8 hours with the language every Sunday. And finally, it works best if you have a system. So if you say, okay, I wake up in the morning, I will do this little thing for 20 minutes, sure. And then in the evening before I go to bed, I do this and that.
Okay, and another very interesting thing about you is that you learned all the languages that you speak without living abroad, so in that particular country for a lot of time. Yeah. So, well, I'm really fighting about that idea that you have to live there and so on. So I'd like to have some details about that. So yeah. What do you think about that, about learning?
I think this has become possible only with the internet. I think this was really sure. Not possible before, because who could you speak to, right? I mean, how would you practice the language? Where would you find all the books and listen to all these things? But Today you can create your own country if you're online, because you can listen to so many audiobooks and videos, etc. You can download books, textbooks, whatever you want. Really, it's all out there. So I can kind of create the environment, the foreign environment here in Slovakia without ever leaving abroad. And this is actually the way I do it. I like to go abroad. I like to travel a lot, but I only go after I speak the language on a B1 or a plus level. So I've spent, for example, 10 months in Poland, but when I came, I was already on a C1 level. So I really learn here in Slovakia, and then I just go abroad to use the language. And I think this works much better, because if you go to a foreign country and you don't speak anything, you will pick up random words, like here and there, but it's not very effective. But if you already speak on a B1 level, you can just increase like that very, very easily, because you suddenly understand things and you can put it all together, and it's just so much more intense.
Okay, so I watched the video of Lydia speaking German and Russian. So I know that the first reaction of a person it's to say how talented is that girl. She's a genius. She's very special. So I'd like to have your opinion about are there these polyglots really talented or like special human beings, or it's just they have other secrets?
Yeah, well, this is what most people think, right? Oh, these polyglots, they're so super talented. It's not true. I think if you go and ask all the other 400 people at this gathering, then everyone will tell you that it's not about the talent. Often this is an excuse. If we're really honest, this is often an excuse of people who don't want to learn languages. They have been struggling for it for some time, and they think like, oh, well, clearly, if I've been learning for 20 years and I cannot learn one stupid language, then you must be talented because you can learn 20, right? But I always tell people this is not about the talent, it's about the different approach. So if maybe I had a different approach in learning the languages, and maybe you have a different one. So even if you think about it a little, just maybe be open to the possibility of learning in a different way, it could work. And the different way usually means that you really take the learning into your own hands and you learn actively by yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lydia. It was very interesting. I hope you enjoyed the hair tips. So thank you very much for watching the video. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.